I'm sorry it's taken so long. It's been an emotional month. I felt like I'm losing my mind. Or at least I lost it. I've been in the hospital for 3 weeks. You'll remember I left off at my wife's parents' house. Not sure what the hell to do. My wife and I argued about it. My in-laws said call the priest. I told my wife we're calling the cops and that's it. Day we finally called the cops would be day 6. Now my family was still sitting on the goddamn bed, staring at the camera. I told the dispatchers that there were intruders in my house, leaving out the part where they looked exactly like my family. I told her we were out of the house, but I would meet the police there. She dispatched 2 units. My wife begged me not to go. I told her I had to be there. I had a foolproof plan. I would take her mom's iPhone and FaceTime my wife while showing the police the camera on my phone. They would see that this was a messed up situation and hopefully proceed with caution. My coworker friend said he would come with me as well. My friend and I beat the cops to my house. I have a concealed carry, so I had my 1911 .45 on me. I was not concerned this would bother the cops, as I was going to inform them of my permit and that I was currently carrying. What I wasn't going to tell them was that I had my father-in-law's AR-15 in my trunk. I didn't plan on telling the cops about it, because I wasn't planning on needing it. They would come armed and prepared. They showed up and I let them know I was armed, then enacted my plan. I initially told them the story. They looked at each other like I was crazy. They didn't believe me. I FaceTimed my wife so they could see she was in fact not in the house despite what our camera was showing. They still didn't seem to believe me, but this did pique their interest. I hung up with my wife and I told her I'd call her back as soon as we knew something. So now we're sure this isn't a recording, an officer stated, repeating what I said. It's not. The day-night cycle has changed every day. Their blinking is erratic and not cyclical like it was a repeat, I said. I know it's a stupid question, but your wife isn't a twin? The officer asked as I told him no. My friend spoke up. I have an idea. Turn the volume up. I'll go throw a pebble at the window. He went around back while I turned the volume to the max. Okay, I'm tossing. We heard the light tick sound from outside, but the 1-second delay on the camera came in loud and clear through the phone. Not my wife moved at the sound of the pebble hitting the window. First time I'd actually seen her move aside from the time she wasn't on screen when I initially went inside the house the first day. She turned her head towards the window, just slightly, before turning back to the camera. Okay, so this is live, an officer said. Okay, sir, I need you and your friend to stay outside here. We're going to go in and find out what's going on here. Should you ask for more units? I asked hopefully. Not at this time. We're going to assess the situation first. They don't appear to be armed, but we're going to be cautious. I opened the garage door for them, and they made their way in towards my kitchen door. They radioed dispatch that they were headed in and to stand by. They disappeared into my house. A few seconds after they went in, the camera went off. I wanted to vomit, and I felt like if I put my finger in my mouth, I'd be able to feel my heart since it leaped so far up into my throat. Damn, I yelled to my friend. I immediately popped the trunk and got my rifle out and ran into the garage. My friend right behind me. Got inside just in time to hear a low, guttural howl from upstairs. Demonic sounding almost, along with raised voices from the police. There were several shots. Need backup. Shots fired. He was cut off. Oh my God, my friend howled. He was scared, but so was I. God damn it, I knew it. I said, running up the stairs. My son's room is the first one you come to after getting upstairs, so as well is also what you see when you walk up the stairs. As I reached the top, I laid into the wall with my rifle. It was a 30-round mag, but I felt like I fired 100 shots. I fired all over the place, knowing full well the ammo would go through the wall like it was paper, focusing on where my son's bed would be, but also near the door and towards the floor as well, in case whatever these things were thought to duck. We heard shrieks of pain coming from the room. Then nothing. My friend and I paused for a minute before deciding to go in because the camera was still out. We heard a whimpering coming from the room. There was a dead cop in the hallway we had to step over. It was awful, and I'll never be able to unsee it. His head was several feet away, and his body in the threshold to our guest bedroom. We found the other cop in my son's room, right inside the doorway. He had several large holes in his torso, as if he'd been impaled. Exactly what I was afraid would happen. I called the cops, and whatever these things were killed them. When we entered the room, we found the source of the whimpering. It was not my wife. She was laying on her back on the floor, holding her torso that was bullet-ridden, breathing heavy. The scene was awful. I can hardly put into words how awful it was. I know now, just like I did then, they weren't my family. Shouldn't have been hard. Should have just been able to go in and finish it. But instead, I fell to my knees. Not my wife begged for her life. "I don't want to die, honey," she whimpered. "I want to have more kids. I can't die now." I looked over at not my son, who had to be dead. He'd taken 2 shots at least to the head, or what was left of it. He had several in his torso, and 1 or 2 in his legs and arms. If you have kids, seeing their lifeless, bullet-ridden body, special kind of hell. Again, I knew it wasn't my son, but it was. I was going to be sick. I'd killed my family. I turned back to not my wife. She was acting just like my wife. It even mimicked her anxiety about death that she has had in the past year or so. It's not her, man. I forgot my friend was even there. It's not her, shoot it. I know what you guys are thinking. How many times has this happened in the movies? You scream at your TV for the main character to just shoot the imposter, because it's not their loved one. I guess movies get it right somehow. I'll never roll my eyes at the character who can't kill an imposter again. "Please don't shoot me," it begged. My hands were shaking as I aimed at it. Why couldn't I do it? I knew this wasn't my wife. "Listen, man," my friend began calmly. "Look at it. Its blood is yellow. It's not your family." Was it yellow? It was. Seeing my family slain was so traumatic, I didn't even notice their blood wasn't red. I steadied my aim, and not my wife suddenly stopped begging. She began that guttural, terrifying shriek. Something black or gray started to protrude from her mouth, like a tentacle or something, and I fired. At that range, her head more or less exploded. Whatever these things were, they appeared to be mortal. I was still on my knees, and my friend was out in the hallway, just outside the door. We heard the sounds of approaching police sirens. I had forgotten one of the cops had gotten a shots fired call over the radio before being killed. It seemed like it had been hours, but it had only been about 5 minutes since the police had gone in. My friend went downstairs to let the police know what to expect. I stood up and slowly made my way into the hallway. I was lightheaded and felt like I was going to be sick. My bedroom is adjacent to my son's, so the doorway is about a foot to the right of my son's doorway. My door was closed, but as I exited my son's room, my door opened. Not me walked out into the hallway, wearing exactly the same thing I was at that time. I was shocked in place. Couldn't move. But it did. It walked towards me. Its right arm turned black and morphed into what appeared to be a tentacle. It was wiggling around like a squid or an octopus appendage. When he thrust his arm at me, it solidified and impaled me through my abdomen, then stabbed me in the left leg, just above the kneecap. I fell to the ground in pain. Its tentacle arm was wiggling again. "Why did you kill my family?" it asked. When it spoke, its voice changed pitch several times. It was my voice, then much deeper, then normal again. It alternated several times, saying that one sentence. It moved in close. The rifle was gone, but I still had my .45. I pulled it out and got a shot off. In its right knee, it howled. As Not-Me fell to his knees, I fired a couple more shots, getting 2 into its abdomen and left side of its ribs. It breathed heavily for a few seconds before I used the last of my strength to aim proper and shoot Not-Me in the face. Its blood was also yellow. I lay there bleeding out, thinking this was it for sure. I still had some strength from adrenaline kicking in, so I took my belt off, and I tried to make a tourniquet for my leg. With my stomach wound, it was hard to give it a good yank to tighten it. I then took my shirt off, balled it up, and packed my stomach wound, and applied as much pressure as I could. Being a nurse probably saved my life. I passed out, but the measures I took must have kept me alive long enough for EMS to arrive. I heard raised voices and the sound of pounding coming up the stairs before I went out. It was probably a cop, but I felt pressure from somebody, trying to keep my wound packed before I went out. I was in and out of consciousness as EMS arrived, along with probably every cop in the city. I was wheeled downstairs and put in an ambulance. But while I was being loaded onto the gurney upstairs, I heard cops freaking out, and rightfully so. They'd lost 2 brothers, and there were 3 other bodies. Did he kill his brother? Are they twins? Probably referring to Not-Me's dead body, or his whole family. Put him on armed guard while he's at the hospital. He'll probably be getting charged. As I was getting placed into the ambulance, I saw my friend talking to a group of about 10 cops, all listening very intently to what he was saying. I went out again in the ambulance. I woke up in the ER. My wounds had been treated. The tentacle hadn't been more than a few inches wide, so it was just slightly larger than a large knife. They'd sewn me up, and I found that I was currently receiving a blood transfusion due to blood loss at my home. My wife had authorized them to do whatever they needed to while I was unconscious. She was also extremely mad that I went into the house. We're okay now. That's a story for another day. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks since I ended up getting an infection, and I almost went sepsis. I needed quite a few antibiotics. For the entire 3 weeks, I had cops in my room with questions. After about a week, they released me. No longer had me under armed guard. Told them absolutely everything, not caring if it made sense or not. And thank God my friend had come with me, since he was able to corroborate the story. Midway through my hospital stay, men with suits came in to pay me a visit. They were government. I knew right away. They said they were FBI, but I don't know if I believe that. They wanted to talk about not my family. The police chief and the coroner were involved, and it was very hush-hush. They made it clear that it was not to go public. This is where I have to apologize, probably for an anticlimactic ending to this ordeal. I don't know what not me and my family were. Neither do they. The only thing we know is that they were sentient creatures that looked like us and had yellow blood. I begged the coroner to tell me about their autopsies, but he said he wasn't allowed to say. He must have felt bad for me, since I received a bouquet of flowers a couple days later. The card inside of the envelope read, "We don't know what they are." They had the same organs we do, but in different parts of their body, aside from their brain. But what's red and pink inside us is green and yellow inside them. They're humanoid creatures, but whatever they are, aren't human. The government thinks they might be extraterrestrial. Destroy this letter as soon as possible. We had our house professionally cleaned. It was almost surely a government team since they contacted us on behalf of the police. We couldn't find any Google reviews or websites for the company online. My wife and I are not going to go back to our house. We would love to burn it down, but there's no way to do that and avoid suspicion of arson at this point. We'll end up taking a huge loss on the property, since everyone in our neighborhood knows there was an incident involving multiple deaths in the house, but don't know what actually happened. It'll be hard to sell, but eventually it will. We're going to move on from here. I told everyone at work it was a home invasion, and they bought it. I'll go back to work in a couple weeks, and we'll start looking for a new house. Again, I'm sorry. I know everyone wanted a concrete ending, and to know exactly what the hell those things were, but we just don't know. Aliens sound good to me. I've been thinking if they were supernatural, or actually demons, gunfire wouldn't have been able to kill them. It's just hard to say. They were aliens? Why did they just sit there and creep in our house for a week? They didn't even try to take over our lives. It's hard to wrap my head around. If it is aliens, keep your eyes peeled out there. There could be more of them.